You're listening to a podcast by Oak Magazine. I would like to acknowledge the Dja Dja Wurrung people as the traditional owners of the land on which this episode was recorded. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures. Welcome to A Friend of Mine, a series of conversations with some incredible and inspiring women in business from regional and rural Australia. I'm Kimberly Finesse, your host and the founder and editor of Oak Magazine, and I cannot wait to introduce you to some amazing female entrepreneurs who will share with you their experience and knowledge of what it takes to start, grow and scale a successful business. So let me introduce you to a friend of mine. You don't plan to have a business in another country, but that's how it panned out for Chris Edwards, and it's working well. Chris followed her husband to Singapore as a trailing spouse in 2008 during the global financial crisis. She struggled to find a job that matched her strong marketing background, skill set, and pay expectations, and instead found herself stuck between jobs that didn't excite her. Chris is the person everyone asks for recommendations on everything across Asia, and that's why she started Honeycombers, a digital lifestyle magazine in Singapore, Hong Kong, and Bali. This serial entrepreneur is not only the founder of Honeycombers, but also Make It in Media, LaunchPad, and a business coach. Chris talks about going into business with co-founders and picking up the pieces after they left, company values, hiring staff, and how a business coach helped her through a scarcity mindset. There are so many takeaway nuggets for business owners, such as, if it's not fun and it doesn't come easy and it's not bringing you joy, stop doing it. Meet my friend and business coach, Chris from Honeycombers. Hello, Chris, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Kimberly. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I feel like I'm letting everyone in on one of my best kept secrets, and that is you for Oak. We've known each other a short time. I think it's only been a couple of years, but it's been, for me, the best few years with my business. Like, I have noticed such a shift in my attitude and even just looking forward more. So not just working in the moment, but really having a really future outlook for my business. So thank you for that. And I can't wait to share you with everyone.
That just gives me goosebumps. That's so nice to hear. Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, I was thinking, just for those that are listening, the way that Chris and I know each other is through Odette. Odette, I think I've spoken about many a times on Instagram, in the magazine. Odette owns Hack Your Own PR, which is the most fabulous course that you need to do if you want to, get your brand into media. So whether it's print, digital, TV, radio, the whole gamut. And Odette introduced me to you, or vice versa. And
Yes.
it was just magic, actually, that it all worked out. And I knew as soon as we hooked up on that call, I just had to have another hour with you. I was like, oh my gosh, can I swap an hour and just keep absorbing whatever knowledge?
Oh, yes. No, Odette is a fantastic connector of people, and her sweet spot is media. So, yes, she's great with that.
Well, I'm sure we could do a whole podcast talking about Odette, but I wanted to talk about you and your businesses, because I think it's really unique in terms of what we've shared through Oak before. So, the business, or the main one that you own, is actually outside of Australia, which is incredible. Let's go back a bit, as always, sort of to the start. How did you come about running your own business?
Yes, well, I moved to Singapore as what they call a trailing spouse, which is a terrible term. But I moved to Singapore because my husband's company opened an office up there. And I just reflected on this morning. It was January 2008. I moved up there. So it was the beginning of the financial crisis, and I could not get a job. I was like knocking on all the doors. I had a really strong marketing background in my work in Australia, and I ended up working for a publishing house for 6 months, and I hated it. It nearly killed me. I was like tears at work, all that jazz. Then some friends approached me from Australia and said, we're creating websites that we want to monetize. And their background was, I suppose, design and tech, and they wanted me to come in and do the commercial side of it. And and from that relationship, we actually came up with the idea of Honeycombers. And those two partners, soon after we launched, maybe 3 months after we launched, decided that they didn't want to do it anymore.
Oh my gosh.
The
honeymoon period rubbed off very quickly.
Yeah, really quickly, very quickly. But I mean, at the time, I was the only one in Singapore. Strangely enough, they were traveling the world and living in Mexico at the time. So it kind of made sense. They were kind of like just trying lots of new things. I said, well, look, I'll take Honeycombers as my 1/3 ownership of the company. And there was two other media platforms, and they sold those off. And so that's kind of how it started. But as I suppose a lot of things start, they kind of start very accidentally, don't they? And it was very different to what it is today, as many things do grow from a small start. But it was really just a website. And I should explain, Honeycombers is like a city guide. So it's a lot like Broadsheet or Urban List in Australia, but it's a city guide to Singapore, Hong Kong and Bali. And it really started with me writing very short 300-word snippets of great places to get coffee or great places to shop, great places to really, I suppose, get under the skin of the city. That's kind of how it started, all by a lot of adversity, really.
And I can't believe, like, you've held in for so long, really, like, given that it was, a partnership that you started with, and then that sort of broke down so very, very early, but still have been able to grab it, hold it, and make it your own. Has there been any transferable skills from that background that you had that you've been able to apply to Honeycombers and have helped in its success?
Yeah, absolutely. So I studied marketing and commerce at uni, and then I had a marketing career. So I worked in marketing in the retail food sector in Australia, and then my 6 months working in publishing was just so rich in understanding how to create it was really print magazine. That's what I was responsible for. So I learned how to create a rate card. I learned how to work with media agencies. I learned how to work with editorial teams. So I really, I suppose, understood how that business looks, and that gave me a little bit of confidence. Not a lot, because there wasn't a lot of digital skills in that business. It was very old-fashioned print, but I suppose it gave me enough to get started that I could know where to go to lean on some people to help me out. So when I started Honeycombers, I actually started working with an agent who sold media space. And they weren't able to sell me a lot of media space on Honeycombers, but they definitely helped me get Honeycombers on the map of the media buyers in Singapore.
Yeah. It's really, like, back then, I mean, an online website as such as Honeycombers would have been quite unique.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So I used to go out and pitch to people, and they'd be like, so it's an online magazine, right? So where's the magazine?
Yep.
And I'd be like, it's all online. It's on a website. And they're like, oh, so it's a blog. And I'm like, no, it's not a blog. But yeah, it was really interesting. And the other thing is from the beginning, we always had the model of selling advertorials first. So I didn't want to sell banners or, traditional print, like squares on the page. I really wanted to sell advertorial content. And that was a really great decision, because advertorial content, I believe it works better, but more importantly, when you're starting out, you can sell it for a decent chunk because it's actually a whole piece of creative work. Whereas selling a square on a page, you're in a very much a commodity market. So,
have you ever been tempted by print, Chris?
Yes. Yes. I think I've got a business plan to take Honeycombers into print. And actually, we got sponsored by the Singapore Tourism Board, and we produced a quarterly print magazine for them. What was it called? it was something about Singapore by Honeycombers. So we did print for a little while, but it was a very different print because it was a contract print job.
Yeah.
But yes, I do love print. But yeah, there's so many things that I'm tempted by. Like I just, have a long list of things that I'm like, oh, I could do that. Oh, I could do that.
Now, living in Singapore and being from Australia, like, is it very different in the way they work over there? Like, was there a bit of adjustment that you had to make in what you would normally do at home here in Australia?
Yes and no. Like, luckily, it's all English speaking. But Singapore's a very complex place because it's incredibly multicultural. So, Singapore is, I suppose, predominantly Chinese Singaporeans, but then there's also a large Indian population, a large Malay population, a large Filipino population. And so my team in Singapore right now, I think we have about 25 staff in Singapore. It's like the UN, it's so multicultural. And that's great. And we do have a really diverse group of people. But yeah, like that was my big struggle when I first got a job in Singapore. I just did not have the cultural nuances or being able to read situations as well as I can now. And even now, like I'm still pretty bad. And I have a really wonderful person on my team who is my people and culture manager. And she is an Aussie girl who lives in Singapore but has this really rich connection with her husband's half Singaporean. And actually my finance manager is also half Australian, half Malaysian. So I have these people around me who bridge it really nicely, who can really, and they help steer me a lot. Because, and then the thing is the generational thing, right? Because a lot of our staff are really young, and I'm like, I'm going to be 45 in a couple of months. So I'm actually outside the demographic of my readership in a couple of months, So there's a lot of things where you go, I don't really understand this, but I'm going to have to just find someone who can help steer me or explain it to me. But yeah, it is quite different.
How long did it take for Honeycombers to take off? Like, was it something that was really instantaneous, or you at least saw the potential in it, or has it just been a really hard, gradual slog?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I started Honeycombers in December 2008, I'm pretty sure, or 9, I can't remember. But I should remember, we're just talking about this because I had my daughter 10 months after I started the business. So, and the reason I say this is because I was working whilst having babies and I had very low expectations on the business. I was just like, I'm just really happy that I can work from home, do something I enjoy, work during the naps. Like it was before work from home was a thing, right? And so I just remember like having her in a bouncer and having one foot rocking the bouncer while I was typing. And I was so happy that I could balance this role in life where I could have kids and be with them, but still have this great intellectual and mental challenge. So the reason I say all of this is I had very low expectations. So my initial goal was all I wanted to do was to help pay for I wanted to pay for the wage of my helper because we had a live-in helper there. Also another big secret to how I was able to create a business and all these things. Someone else was cooking dinner. But yeah, so I had very low goals, but I really loved what I was doing. So I was, I used to think to myself, why would I want to watch television when I could work? Like that was my whole thing. So I loved it. But yeah, so it really started to take off when my second child was born. So that was in about year 3 of the business. And that was when I employed, I think, my second employee. So it was really slow for the first 2 years. It really was just me on a keyboard and, it wasn't and my first employee, I didn't go, right, let's go out and employ someone. I had someone actually come to me, said, I love what you're doing. Can I please be an intern? And I was like, yeah, great. And then they interned and then they said to me, oh, look, my parents want me to get a real job that has superannuation. And I was like, oh, she's so good. I said to my husband, she's so good. What am I going to do? And he's like, well, employer, you goose, you can afford it. And I was like, oh, wow, yeah, I suppose I can. But, really very humble beginnings. But yeah, as soon as I remember we had a party for when we hit 50,000 readers. And that was when, Louis was a baby and I just had 2 staff, and yeah, it grew very rapidly. So very slow for the first 2 or 3 years. And then, I used to describe it like a runaway train that I was just trying to hang on to for the next few years. And now it's kind of become very stable and I suppose very predictable and easy. Now it's in a more mature stage. But yeah.
Now, I know we'll talk about challenges because obviously we've had COVID in there and, we've all changed the way we do things. But just to go back to that point where you were mentioning hiring staff, I mean, you've said this to me in some of our coaching sessions, is to look within the community of those within Oak first. Like, I think it's such a good tip that sometimes it's the ones that are your cheerleaders that do make the best staff because they're already on your team.
Exactly right. Like, you definitely want people who love what you're doing and are, in your corner, and then you give them the opportunity to contribute and they're like, yes, because I suppose it all comes down to that, working with purpose, right? And that's kind of what I was, reflecting on there, that, I had such passion and purpose for what I was doing. It didn't really matter. It didn't matter how many hours. It didn't matter what I was getting paid. And when you're a startup, you need people that have that same enthusiasm, because you can't compete on money and you can't compete on, benefits but what you can compete on is this wonderful experience of being involved in building something that you're really proud of, which that's what everyone wants, don't they?
Yeah.
That really wonderful sense of fulfillment.
Yeah. So what have been some highlights then along the way?
Oh, gosh. Lots of highlights. I won an award which I didn't apply for. That was really beautiful. Yeah. I won Entrepreneur of the Year award for the Australian Chamber of Commerce in Singapore, and didn't expect it, but it was a real delight. And then I remember launching into Hong Kong was really exciting. We had a big launch party, and they had, that the backdrop stuff that you have at really fancy events, and it had honeycombers all over it. I was like, oh my God, I'm taking a photo
A media wall. Yeah.
Media wall, that's the name. Yes. I was like, wow, look, there's a honeycombers media wall. Look, I think there's been lots of highlights. Being able to leave the business and move back home was a really big highlight. And that was not without stress, but and as much as COVID has been really tricky and a real curveball for me and the business, like our revenues dropped from one month to the next by 80%, it has also given me this wonderful new world where I can sit in Australia and manage a business in Singapore and Hong Kong and Bali, and everyone's like, yeah, of course you can. But for pre-COVID, it was harder for it to be seen as a normal thing to do. And so, lots of lovely highlights.
So when that decision came to move back home to Australia, was there ever like a little niggle there? It's like, well, should I sell up before I come home? Or you always had the intention of building it so it was sustainable without you at the head being there present day in, day out?
No, I did take it out to market and I got an offer on the business, which was really exciting. I turned down the offer, which, I like a really hard decision at the time. And I'm really glad that I turned down the offer now. But, I think 3 months later, I was like, what did I do that for? Real torment. But yeah, I was very worried about how it was going to work. You don't plan to have a business in another country. Like, that's not a good idea. Yeah. But it's actually working beautifully for me now. So, it's all.
So we were talking about balancing kids and work. I just think it's incredible what you've done, especially, again, just, not being in the same country as your business and, even being away from home and away from family support whilst, having kids and that. How have you balanced? Because I mean, obviously everyone looks from the outside in and they just see people who have it together. Like, honestly, when you've got more than two kids, I think, people look at mums and think, oh my gosh, look how I don't know how they balance it all, but they're doing really good. They've got a business, it's successful. How has it been though? I suppose behind the highlight reel.
I'm really happy to show warts and all. It has been a real roller coaster. We were talking about just the other day. In fact, I shared this with a group of entrepreneurs just the other day that, it was only 14 months ago. I just had a really tough time, and I just went into a negative spiral, and I honestly, it was really bizarre because I'm innately a very positive and optimistic person, but something just flicked and I was just doom and gloom and I was just forecasting the worst. And I was just like, but what if this happens? But what if this happens? And it was all just like the negative on negative. And that kind of came out of the fact that I did have this massive revenue drop from one month to the next. And it was the same month that we decided as a family that my husband should stop work. And they're kind of not really related, but it was like, oh my God, I've got the whole responsibility of the family's finances and livelihood. And I can't put my hand on my heart and say things are going to be okay. But so I got out of that funk by just talking to a really great business coach who used a fantastic technique of really, I suppose, highlighting to me that I was in a scarcity mindset. And she actually did some tapping, which worked wonders. I don't know if you've ever done any tapping. So tapping's a wonderful technique, a bit like, I suppose, meditation and journaling, where you can just change your energy and change your way, or I suppose it's your energy and your status quo by tapping on like key meridian points in your body. Anyway, pretty woo-woo. I do live in Byron Bay, so I really have great access to all the woo-woo, and I love a bit of woo-woo. But that was not the first time I've been in a complete like, holy shit, the world is ending, the sky's falling in. Like, I think everyone who has a business has definitely had highs and lows. It's part of the journey, right? And my husband laughs because I do have lots of highs and lows, and every time I'm like, oh my God, yes, 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 and he just says, oh, we're up. Yeah. Ready for it, everyone. Get ready for the crash, because it is like, it is like, big highs and big lows. And I love it, it is, because I'm on a high right now.
We love it, Chris. I'm not sure everyone else in our households love it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, it's probably the same here. Yeah. There's obviously a lot going on with it, and sometimes it's just that the balls are all up in the air at the same time. So for me, the mag's about to come off the printer. The podcast van is sort of getting half done. There's the audio version in the mix as well, and just a couple of other things. And it's just like, I just I don't know if I'm on a high or a low at the minute. I think I'm just in the spin, like that roller coaster bit that goes around, just waiting to be shot out on another end of it.
Yeah, it's a ride, isn't it?
But to seek help, and to talk it through. So is that going to become something that you do more regularly, do you think?
I don't know. I kind of like to dip in and out of leaning on different resources. I mean, I definitely have people in my life that I talk to that are not coaches, but, like my husband or my dad or, my best friends. But I definitely am a talker through everything. But in terms of, I suppose I'm a little bit wary of not finding the answers from within a little bit too. And I really like being able to know that there are resources there that I can lean on. But I don't know. I think it's great if you can, and I suppose for every different situation, there are so many amazing experts and counselors, and I definitely see people that are in a bit of a funk, and I'm like, you just need to go and talk to an expert, like whether it's a marriage funk or a work funk or a business funk, like I definitely think there's a lot of great people out there that can help you. And I think that was a great lesson that, I've had business coaches in the past and they've been really good, but I think business coaches are good to get you to a certain place, and you will always grow out of a business coach if they're a good coach, right? Because you'll learn everything you need to learn, and then you kind of like, I need something new.
Are you always stressing and guessing when it comes to your social media marketing? Do you feel like your effort doesn't bring the results you need, or you don't know how to check? Well, you need to check out my friend Mac and Ernie. Erica McInerney is a qualified marketing strategist with 25 years real experience putting advertising, marketing, and social media to work. She's focused on regional and rural businesses, teaching you the skills and confidence to develop strategy, measure results, and keep that content machine running. For free tips, follow Mac and Ernie on social media or head to macandernie.com.au to find out more. Now back to the show. And I suppose that's what you are to me. You're my business coach at the moment, and it's been incredible. I think when you work on your own, to have that sounding board and to have someone have those uncomfortable conversations with you. Have you checked your numbers? Can you afford it? Let's run your numbers now. Because otherwise, those numbers for me would just sit over in the corner and I would ignore them. So it is that accountability. Now, whilst you've been my business coach, you've also launched this other beautiful product called Make It in Media, which I think is incredible because it helps other people. You just share all your knowledge. I think that's what I love about it. And it can help so many people. Now, I missed out on the first, I suppose, what would you call it, the first cohort, and had complete FOMO over it. So I've joined the second one, thank goodness, and have loved it. What made you decide to launch Make It in Media?
Well, I think I was looking for a new challenge, and what's been amazing about Make It Media is it's made me really look inwards at my own business and make sure that I'm doing everything, I suppose, more thoroughly and more textbook, because I've thought about what are the core, I suppose, cylinders of a business, if you may. And, that's how I structured the course. And when I deep dive into those, I'm like, oh, actually, Honeycombers needs to be sharper around here, or we need to clean this up a little bit. So that's been really great. And I think, overall, Make It Media it's really lovely teaching it, but it's quite a lot of work, and I'm not sure I'm going to run it anytime soon because I've got other little projects that I'm kind of working on that I feel are probably more scalable. Like, it's pretty niche. But yeah, look, it's been anything that you do that's new and challenging. It's really, I suppose, a way to learn and upskill yourself. So every time I take on something new, it's a way also for me to keep really fresh in my own business. So it feeds me as much as it feeds other people.
Yeah. And tell me about LaunchPad, because that's the other thing that you look after as well. There's lots.
Yeah, there is lots. And actually, when I went recently to Singapore and I was working on LaunchPad and Honeycombers, and then I had a Make It Media session, I was like, okay, I think I might have a little too much on. But LaunchPad is my new baby, and it kind of came out of Make It Media in that the feedback from Make It Media was, yes, the content's great, and yes, it's great to have someone who's done it before in your industry, because I think that's the thing about Make It Media. There's not too much industry-specific education for media businesses. But the feedback I got was what people loved the most was just meeting other entrepreneurs on the course that are in the same boat. And it's that sense of community, and that's kind of where LaunchPad came from. And I thought, this is what I need to bring to Singapore and Hong Kong for my advertisers and clients and friends in those communities. So I'm really, I'm kind of, I suppose, what I was bringing to Make It Media, I've kind of amplified and doing it on a bigger scale, so it's open to all industries for LaunchPad. And I do coaching calls in LaunchPad, and it's the highlight of my week.
Yeah.
It's so wonderful.
Yep.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Is there more opportunity in Singapore than here? Like, it just seems that things are working, like LaunchPad and Honeycombers obviously work so well over there. Is it, why is that?
Look, I think one thing is it's very different. It's very international. I suppose, I don't want to say it's a little bit behind, but, Australia, I feel like America leads a lot of innovation in media, innovation in content, innovation in business. And I feel like Australia is very close behind. And I feel like Asia is maybe a little step behind that. So in some areas it's not. So in tech and like Singapore is a massive tech hub, and it's also a startup city. So there's lots of startups, and there's lots of grants, and there's lots of government focus on tech startups. But in terms of I suppose new product and content trends, it's, like one thing I'm seeing here is, and I don't know why it's been on my radar, but looking at sustainability in hair salons, right? So I've been reading articles about these great hair salons that are doing everything they can to make sure that they're being more sustainable. And I'm like, to the Honeycombers editorial team, we've got to find who's doing this in Singapore and write about it. And they're like, no one's doing it here. I'm just like, but this is what we all need to be doing in every sector. And they're like, no, it's not happening yet. So like it is just, it moves at a different pace, and it focuses on different things. And look, LaunchPad's not out of the woods yet. It's very in its infancy. We're not breaking even, but it's tracking well. But it's not a guaranteed success yet.
Yep.
What is a guaranteed success anyway? But yeah, it's another fun, ambitious project.
Yeah. But as you said once before, when I was talking about the podcast van, because I said, that for me is just this crazy idea that I haven't thought all the way through, to be honest. But isn't this the whole joy of having our own business, like running our own business, that we get to do these things, just find joy moments, and if they don't work, well, so be it, as long as we haven't sunk a whole heap of money in it. But yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And, my big last message from my course, the last cohort of Make It Media, is if it's not fun and it doesn't come easy and it's not bringing you joy, stop doing it. Like we've chosen to be entrepreneurs because we seek great adventure but great happiness from our whole life, and it is more challenging, but it should be more joyful. But I do think sometimes, look, entrepreneurialism isn't for everyone, right? You have to be a certain type of personality. You have to be very optimistic and very resilient, and not everyone has that. And but you do it for joy. So I absolutely agree. You got to have fun with it.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, totally.
What excites you about the future of what you're doing?
I suppose just the limitless possibilities of what we can do in our space. I mean, basically we talk about ideas, right, and concepts, and like just this morning I was brainstorming on an event series. It's so fun. I don't know, limitless ideas, and then you can bring them together and find a way to commercialize them so they're sustainable and, deliver impact and make people think and make people, we say at Honeycombers, our goal is for everyone to live better lives, like just to have a better coffee, or know a better park or a better experience, like just to get the most out of life. So yeah, I suppose that's it.
Yeah. And when you just spoke about sort of honeycombers and what, valuing that whole better this and better that, I think that's something that I loved getting to know about your business, because obviously when you do have a business coach, it's sort of more talking about your own. But through the course, I've got to know more about you and honeycombers and just how incredibly big it is, like the numbers in terms of how many website visits and revenue and all of that sort of stuff. But even things like your style guide and your values, and these are the things we expect from a really large corporation. Has that taken ages to embed for you, those little things? Or was that something that you thought we need, from experience having worked elsewhere, we need that style guide? I need to have a dashboard of my, ins and outs, my expenses and what's happening up front.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I don't have a style guide for Honeycombers. It's one of the things on the to-do list, and it is like, so it's not all buttoned up. And then our values, we have had them for a long time, but it wasn't until I did the Make It Media course, I was like, oh my God, we need the values on the website. We need them more front and center. And so that was the kind of the bit of what I was referring to, the fine tuning of my own business. That was the big one for me. And what's really interesting is my HR manager messaged me on Friday and she said, I'm doing all these interviews at the moment for this new role, and everyone knows our values and everyone's so pumped up about working for us. And we've done a lot of work in that space. We've done a lot around creating a really great work environment and doing things better than our competitors when it comes to being an employer. And it's now kind of the word of mouth's working, and people are coming to the interviews going, I love what you stand for. But they're saying that because it's on our website. They're saying it because we're shouting it louder. But yeah, that has taken a long time. There's always been like, I know I want to get it there, but there's always something else to do, right? There's always a long list of jobs in any business that needs to get done. But I think also when you get to a mature stage of business too, you have the luxury to go back and go, okay, I need to clean that up. I need to tighten that up. And Make It Medium was the mechanism to give me that. If I'm going to teach, I need to walk the talk, right? I need my jacket completely buttoned up before I could get out on stage. And it really has helped me, get those last little niggly things done. But yeah, I mean, it is almost 14 years I've had that business. So it's a long time,
It is,
right?
yeah. And it still lights you up.
Yeah, it does. It does light me up because I am passionate about, look, the big thing is I like the opportunity to write about things that need to be spoken about. And that's another thing in Asia, so a lot of the media in Singapore is owned by the government, and a lot of people in Singapore are very conservative and very frightened about what could happen if they step out of line, or if they, get in trouble for saying the wrong thing. And so I really like having the opportunity to highlight really, I suppose, social issues that are important, I believe, to kind of give a platform to. And not only social issues, but just, I don't know, like talking about sex and abortion and, gender diversity, like all this stuff that people would naturally want to shy away from. And I'm like, no, guys, this is like, we've got to be the change we want to see, as cliche as that is. And I don't want our kids growing up feeling ashamed, or, like, the world is changing and we get the opportunity to lead some of this change. So that's a real privilege. And it brings me joy when I see people who are writers on my team writing about this stuff. And I'm like, yes. Yeah. Good.
Does that light them up too, do you think? Like to write about those topics? It's like, wow, look, I've got freedom to do this here. Like, this is an opportunity to tap into this
Yeah.
side of me that normally I'm assuming if you're a journo in another newspaper that just isn't what you get to write about at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And sometimes it's hard to make sure that they're comfortable
Yeah.
writing about it. So often we'll say, you can write about all this stuff. And they'll be like, oh no, it's okay. I'll just write about the best cafes. And I'm like, that's cool, but I need other writers on the team that feel
Yep.
confident to go there. But yeah, not everyone does, for sure.
Oh, incredible. To wrap us up, my favorite question is to ask you about a friend of yours that we need to know about.
Well, look, I think it has to be Adette
I was
Barry.
going
I
to
know
think.
we've already given her a plug at the beginning of this call, but Adette's an incredible friend and a very smart business person, very smart person. And I think if anyone listening wants to learn about how to get themselves featured in media, she's your girl.
Yeah.
And she has a wonderful course that achieves amazing results for her students. So
Yeah.
there's 2 plugs for Adette. You'll be buying coffee next week, my friend.
I think I know that those who go through Odette's course, like I just say yes to them when they come into my inbox because they do all the right things. I mean, there is a level of romancing an editor when you want to pitch your story. Like, there are ways to buy me the red roses and the chocolates and all that in a print PR version. So I just love what Odette does as well. And I just think she's an amazing human. And I was only talking about her the other day. I was sitting down with a former radio journo and, she sort of wants to get back in that space, but on her own terms. So she's, got a little one now and just wants to run her own business and said, look, I just don't know how to go about that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you need to, tap into Odette. Odette will help you, become that PR machine and how it all works. So my gosh, I could talk about her too all day. I think she's amazing what she does and love to sit in on any of the courses that she does. Yeah. You can buy
Yeah,
me coffee
maybe.
too, Odette. Lovely. Well, thank you so much for being a guest, Chris. You have been an incredible support for my business in the last couple of years, especially during COVID. And I just love catching up every month. And the reason why I did the Make It in Media was because I'm like, an hour's not enough. An hour every 30 days is not
Oh,
enough. I need more of
oh,
Chris. And look,
oh.
admittedly, over those 6 weeks, I've got pages of notes and more work that I need to do. But as you said, it's about coming to a point in your business where you do need to go back and do a few of those things. So looking at the values and putting them on the website. And obviously you had amazing guest speakers like Kate Toon, who is an incredible SEO queen. They're the things that need to be done. But it's like, when am I going to get the time for SEO when I'm trying to, post on Insta every day? So it's good to know that I can go back to that now and have some tips from her. Tim Duggan, who's obviously just an incredible genius in media as well. You obviously know the right people. You do a fabulous job connecting us all as well. So,
Oh.
it's been amazing.
Oh, I'm so pleased to hear that. And I'm so glad you got to join the course the second
Yes.
time round. But yeah, no, it is great to have, I suppose, just a way to kind of keep growing. Like, I think that's the challenge when you're in your own business, right? Is how do you keep learning,
Yep.
and getting positive energy into your business when you're kind of sitting at home and working on your own and just dealing with all the shit storms, right?
Yep.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to swear, but it can get you down. So it is really nice to, and I've told you this before. I love our coaching calls. I feel like I shouldn't be charging you because it's just like catching up with a friend and giving a few tips. So it's very lovely.
It's definitely helped. And as I said, I literally can see the growth. Like how we were talking, or you more so, about the scarcity mindset. Like I really think, like if I can look back on Oak, I can see when I was in that mindset myself. And it happens to a point still, like coming into a new issue, knowing like if I don't have any ads in the bank to start, like there is that little seed of doubt that just it just sits there ready to sprout, I think, until I get some of that money in, the advertising, and then it happens. And it's so interesting that when you have the money in, that suddenly you've got this abundance and you think, yes, this is possible and I'm going to go do this. And yeah, like I can totally see how that works.
Yeah, it's quite interesting once someone, I don't even know where I learned about the abundance and scarcity mindset, but it really is, once you see it, you can see people living in scarcity and you can see people living in abundance. But the other thing I was going to say is that's one of the terrible things about a media business. It's like every month with my business, you start at zero and you have to kind of climb up to break even, and then, so my month's always like, are we going to get there? Yes, we've got there. Yes, last week I'm usually like, woohoo! But, like it's like I'm in 14 years in and I'm still doing this to myself. I mean, it's stupid, really.
It's exhausting.
But it is exhausting. And I just, I think that's why I like the idea of doing different business models that are a different revenue stream than one-off media contracts, which is kind of like,
media is not for the faint-hearted. You have to be resilient.
And Tim Duggan also said you don't go into media to make money either. So I'm like,
I know.
Choose a different industry.
Yeah, I think I knew that going in, thank goodness. I think it would be a totally different ball game if I didn't. But generally you're in it because you love it though. Like you love sharing people's stories or sharing knowledge to help other people and to connect and to build community. So love it.
It's a very powerful and privileged role,
it is actually.
in society.
It is. Well, thank you again, and no doubt I'll see you online in a couple of weeks.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Now, before you take off with all that inspiration and knowledge, we'd love for you to leave a review on our podcast so that we can continue to amplify women's voices in the media. And if you have any questions, we'd like to celebrate a win, you can always connect with us on Facebook and Instagram at Oak Magazine AU. I'm so glad we've met and that now you know a friend of mine.